as well. So I don't know how that's going to work. I'm just testing this, so we're going to see how this goes. Testing on multiple streaming at the same time. Let's see if I can hit multi-platforms. So we're testing. So if you're listening on YouTube, do me a favor. If you are listening on YouTube, um, make a comment and see if it, I just want to see if it comes through. Let me see if I can give you the YouTube channel if you want to test that out for me while you're sitting there. I will give you, you would go to, whoops. So you go to www.youtube.com/DonDeRosa2. I'm just testing this out. So if you're going and want to be a gem and test this out for me, if you go to that link, and sorry, it should say YouTube, not UYTube. I don't know if I can edit that. Yeah, I guess I can. There you go. That should be the case. So I don't know. I don't know if I can see comments or not, but we're gonna try it. We're also, I think, blasting out right now. I think just on Zoom. Okay. Thank you. I really got to replace that cable. So if it doesn't get fit in right all the way, you can't hear me. So can you hear me now? Got it. Okay. So if you didn't hear a word I said we are streaming. I'm going to test something tonight, and I am streaming to not Facebook, sorry, YouTube, and I want to see if it's working. So I'm doing some different high-tech stuff. So if you're a PPG member and you can multitask, I would like for you to go to this YouTube channel. And if you're interested, if you haven't been there, I would love for you to go there and subscribe. Hit the little subscribe button. I need to get my subscription up to 1,000 in order for me to go live. So when I go live, it won't let me go live from my phone, I should say. It'll let me go live like this from my computer, but it will not let me go live from my phone. So if you would be so kind as to, it looks like we have one person on there. So I have a little display down here, which it looks like that. And I can switch from device to device to device. And I'm really trying to make a much more dynamic, powerful presentation. So I'm seeing if there's any comments. If you're able to leave a comment, let me know in the chat box, just because I should be able to see it here, but I'm not. So I'm assuming nobody's gone there. So I don't know if any of you. We got several PPG folks on here. So Rachel, you're saying you sent it over as a test, a comment? Is that what you put on there as a test? I guess the question I have, because I'm not looking at it, can you see it, for one? That's the most important thing. Can you see it? And if you leave a comment, please let me know that you did so that I can see it. I'm looking to see if I can even see it. So please let me know while we kind of go through this. So Rachel, it looks like you said test. Now that's the chat for that you put. I just joined. Can I see what? Okay, well, you put test, so I was assuming you were following me. So maybe not. We'll have to play around with it, hopefully. I don't know if it's actually going live. I don't know if it's actually out there. But if you get a chance tonight and you got a chance to look at it, go to that YouTube channel. Go to that link I just put at the bottom right here. And now somebody just gave me a thumbs up, which is good. I should be able to take and click that and show that. Well, no, I can't show a thumbs up. All I can show is a comment. So if you were the one that gave me a thumbs up, post a comment or put a comment out there. I just want to, I'm doing a little housekeeping or a little research for myself to see if this is going to work and if I have it set up correctly. So I may not even have it set up correctly because Carlton Ford said, I'm trying to comment. Maybe it's not allowing you to comment because of a setting that I have. I would love to know that. Well, so you guys are going to be my guinea pigs tonight. But while you're doing that, I'm letting people file in. So we got quite a few people filing in. So I appreciate that. Let's see. Let me get this out of the way. You won't see me doing a lot of this stuff from now on going forward. Like next week, I will have a different monitor. I ordered myself a 49-inch monitor so that I don't have all these windows open up. I do not see any comments coming from YouTube, so I'm assuming it's not working. I don't know. But anyways, keep trying. Tonight we are going to be talking, well, let me first start by saying welcome everybody. I'm going to try to keep the intro brief. I noticed when I did the last couple edits, my intro was taking like 30 and 40 minutes to get through what PPG is. And it's no wonder people were like, dude, get to the point if you're brand new. I get that. So I'm going to try to keep my intro quick and short and to the point. What I will ask the PPG members to help the process is, people tend to read the comments. So if you're a PPG member and you like the program, normally I would have you interact face to face, but post something of what your opinion is of the PPG, to the folks that are new. Raise your hand if you're new. Let me see how many new folks we have that aren't PPG members. So we got 5, 6, so far 6. Okay, so it looks like maybe 7. Madeline, welcome. Is it Rodlin? Rodlin Joseph. She says it's working. That's good. I got 3 thumbs up on YouTube, but no comments yet. So I don't know. Are you not able to comment? So Yasmin's new. So yeah, and make sure, welcome yourself. Is it, I hope I'm not butchering this. Tico, Hudson, you're new. Rachel's new. Daniel Miller's new. Johnny, I don't know if you're new. I think maybe your hand was up from before, Johnny. Anybody else new? So I can give you a quick shout out. All right, I'll go Rachel. I think I welcomed you. I'm going to lower everybody's hands. Okay, so we've got, is it Lila? Lila Hudda? Hudda? Welcome. All right, so while we're doing that, no way to comment on YouTube that I can see. Interesting. Thank you, Alan. I didn't see an option to add a comment. YouTube is working. Thank you, Brian. Carlton said, I'm trying to comment. So that's going to be something that I am going to have to look into and fix. But with that being said, I'm going to put this up here and show you. I am in the foreseeable future right now, at least for right now, we're going to be doing a new series. I'm trying to get as much information out there to the general public, the real estate investors as possible, give you a chance to do questions and answered. So for the time being, we're going to be doing every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 to 7:30. It's going to be very short, but it's going to be live. It's going to be on YouTube. I'm going to blast it out. You'll see, you can go to, I think, if I can get this working, and that's why I put the date out there it's not going to go live till the 28th. We'll maybe do some testing in the meantime. But you can pretty much will be able to go to any one of those Facebook groups and listen and make comments. So, all right, let's go to the iPad here. Whoops. I want to tell everybody that's new, welcome to Property Protege. I'll try to go through this as quickly as I possibly can. But this is the Property Protege. We meet every Wednesday, and hopefully the governor of our beautiful state is softening the requirements to stay in place. Hopefully not too soon, but we shall see. In my opinion, it's either going to make or break his career on this one. So we'll see. I hope he made the right decision. But everybody still has the choice, just so you know, that if you don't feel comfortable going out, then don't. So anyways, all right, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Don DeRosa. I'll be your coach. Also, we have Chrissy. She's on the line. She will be your assistant coach. If you have any administrative stuff, if you want to order, I'll put some stuff, later if you want to sign up. We got a tremendous deal that, based on the governor saying we're going to be removing this stay. So the prices I'm probably going to leave the prices for another week, and the prices are going to go back to normal. So if you're brand new here and you're not a PPG member and you like what you hear and you've heard good things about it, by all means, you need to act fast because, quite honestly, the prices are going back up. Let's see. Jonathan says no place to put comments. Okay, so I'm going to have to be working on that. So thank you all for your comments or efforts. Oh, wait. Take that back. JC Nichols said test, and this is what it looks like. If I put it on your screen, this is what it'll look like. He said yes, so he was able to comment. And then, is it Tycho? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm pronouncing that right, please let me know. If I'm not, let me know that as well. That seems to be working. One of the reasons why I like that is you can ask questions, and I can actually post the questions. Tico, T-E-K-O. My apologies. So now I got it. Tico Hudson Productions. Awesome. I like your logo. All right. So that that will go away. So that's awesome. That's working. So if you haven't figured out how to put comments on YouTube, chances are you just maybe not have yours set up because they were able to do it. So that's awesome. All right. What is PPG? Again, PPG stands for Property Protege Group. It's a private coaching group. We do this every week. We meet every Wednesday, and normally it's private. Normally, we don't open it up to the general public. This is a private, closed coaching group. We spend an entire year with you. We go through and we're investors. We're all investors in who are kind of working together. We call it our PPG family, and we do a lot of stuff together. I got to keep my glasses on because people were asking questions. So Jonathan says there's a separate chat bar versus the normal comment section in YouTube video. Looks like it requires to have your own YouTube channel to comment in the chat. Interesting. All right. That's good to know. I'll work on it. Maybe it's a setting on my end, but thanks, Jonathan. But we are all investors. We call it our PPG family. We share resources. I'll tell you about an app that we use. We use an app called GroupMe, and that's where we share resources, knowledge. We help each other out. If somebody has a deal they don't know what to do with, someone has a comment, they need insurance, they need a plumber, they need this, they need that, whatever advice they need, whatever they're lacking and they need help on, we have a community of probably over 200 people that you can put your question, your comment into this chat. And I monitor it very closely. Chrissy monitors it very closely. And we have other people that monitor it quite closely. So Alan does it a lot. He's usually pretty quick out there to answer if he can. So we have a network of people that can help you in the GroupMe app. So Johnny said, hello. See, I think that's super cool that I can put that on there. So I'm really going to push hard to kind of use this because I think it's great. We help overcome obstacles and fears. So we are what I would call your one-stop shop. So if you want to learn this business, and here's what I'll tell people, and again, I'm trying to keep this short and brief, but I'm trying to tell people, look, everybody's really worried about what's going on. And usually when this happens, people tend to jump out of real estate and go, well, maybe this is not a good time for me. Even though most people go, yeah, this is a good time because of people are going to be motivated. But most people don't know what they're doing and they get literally forced out of this business. Well, you need to be in this. I'm not one that usually tells you should do anything. I leave it up to you and go, okay, it's up to you. It's your choice. But I'm here to tell you, I'm going to push this for once because of the price that we have it and what we offer. And I would love comments from other PPG members to put them out there for other people to read in the chat so that people can see what kind of program we really have. But I'm going to tell you, we have the best program. If you want to learn real estate, PPG is the best. And what I mean by, and the reason I say that is we spend an entire year with you. We cover everything from soup to nuts. We have an entire agenda. We have guests. We do coaching sessions during the week. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie said it's the best. Daphne, this is really super cool. I got to tell you, better than sliced bread. That is really cool that I can put those comments up on the for everybody to read. That's why I like this. So anyways, we meet every Wednesday in person. Now, when we come out of the shelter in place, we're going to go back to meeting whenever we're allowed to meet with more than 50 people at a time. And, maybe we'll be close right out of the gate at more than 50 because we usually have more than 50 or right around 50 every meeting. Now, there's over 200 and some people, but a lot of you will watch live from home. So a lot of you don't necessarily come to the live event. And if you're out of state, let me lower everybody's hands first. How many people are out of state that do not live in the state of Georgia or aren't close to the Atlanta market? So we have one person, two, because I'm going to speak directly to you folks. In the chat, tell me where you're from or where you're hailing from, so I know where you're coming from. But we have people from Tampa, from Charlotte, from Chattanooga. We have from all the surrounding states, and just about anywhere, because you can watch this live. just like we're doing a webinar, when we're in person, I have cameras on me, just like this. I'm just not sitting and doing a webinar. It's live. Okay, Julie says she's from Parrish, Florida, Sarasota. That's good. Welcome. Jeff Nichols, who just joined last week, is in Milledgeville. So welcome back, Jeff. Live out of state. Brian says, I live out of state. Whereabouts, Brian? What state? But anyways, we meet every Wednesday live like this, but usually I'm in person teaching to a live audience. But since the pandemic and we've been socially quarantined, we've resorted to this, and it's worked out pretty well. But we also do multiple homes. We also do multiple workshops. Like, for example, let me go back. Let me push my little button here. Take that off and tell you about what we have coming up this coming weekend. This weekend, we have a creative deal structuring event coming up Saturday, April 25th, and it's usually from 9, and I say 5, but it'll probably be 4-ish, okay, depending on how many questions. So if you're interested in that, go to that link. I'll leave that link up there for a minute. So we'll leave that up there for a minute. As I scroll by, also, I'll go back and forth. We have multiple home study courses. So when you become a PPG member, you get to log in. You get this site as well. Let me pull. Sorry, I got to pull that down. Hold on. Let me get rid of that and then take you to my iPad. There we go. So you have access to this site, and once you buy PPG, you will have this site forever. It's yours forever. Okay. Inside this site, we have 19 different home study courses, ranging from wholesale, subject to, creative deal structuring, due diligence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are yours. You will always have those. That alone is several thousands of dollars worth of material. So we have, if you look down with the little guy with the ink pen right below the high-tech course, you have forms and how they work. So if you were to click on that little guy and you wanted to learn how to do any form that you really wanted, you click on the form and a video would pop up, and it would be me walking you through every paragraph, showing you how to fill out these forms. So just so you know, and then below that is all the forms. Now, this weekend is this event right here. I also want to share with you, this is, if you just want to buy the courses and you don't want to be a PPG member, you can go to HTREI. There's the login page. To buy all of the 19 courses, the price was $595 about a week ago, and I've been telling Jim to raise it, and he finally raised it. So it finally went back up to normally they're $19.95. We kept the price a little bit lower, and normally these courses are $695 each. They were $199. So if you were able to get a hold of one, but $395 is still a reasonable price for any of these courses. So if you don't want to join PPG, you can get all these for $14.95. The other thing I want to share with you is if you need more information, you want to look at what we do. Let me get rid of that overlay 1 second. Get rid of that overlay for you. This is our PPG coaching site. Click on that, download to get into our text blasting system, or text messaging. So we text message you. There's some recommendations. There's Chrissy and myself. You can read a little bit about us, but here's what you get. You get monthly seminars, and that's kind of what a typical PPG meeting may look like. The when we actually finally meet in live. We do weekly sessions. That's a Wednesday session. That's a typical session right there. But this one here is, let's say, would be normally our creative deal structuring session. It would be a little bit bigger than that. We were in a small room in this one. We also do monthly, or not monthly, but multiple day boot camps throughout the year. A lot of bus trips. Sometimes we'll go to Home Depot. There's your home study courses. You get all the forms. You get Facebook Live. So we created a Facebook group that's private, that everything is stored, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then I do a weekly coaching call every Monday where we ask you whatever. I keep you on target. And then we have what we call group outings. Sometimes we'll go on the lake. Sometimes we'll do outing events like go fishing. Sometimes we'll go to like we went to a hockey game, we went to an escape room, and then we give you software. So that's kind of what you get for the price. So I want you to remember what all you get for the price. And most people will charge you, I will tell you, in the neighborhood for all of that, 20 some $1,000, 20, 30, $40,000 for the group coaching, and you won't even be paying anywhere close to that. So, by the way, I do want to remind everybody that link that I put out here for YouTube, if you don't mind, I need to get my subscribers to 1,000 so that I can go live on my phone. So if you wouldn't mind and you like what you hear, please go to that site, click on the subscribe button and even a notify button so that when I do post stuff like this, you get notified. And we're going to be doing a lot more live stuff on that, just to kind of to change things up a bit. Does anybody have any questions about what I just covered? Just coming in. How much is PPG? Good question, Vincent. Normally, PPG is $4,995, or sometimes we say $4,997. So it depends on who you talk to. However, if you pay all up front, our normal fee, we usually take a couple grand off of that, and we do $29.97. So if you're interested, I've been running a super special since we've been in this whole thing. I was only going to do it for a 24-hour period, but I ended up extending it. I'm not really one of those big fans that say, okay, for today only. So I've been kind of leaving it up there. To just because. And we're about to change that. That price is going to go up. You saw some of these other prices go up. And now as we come out of this shelter in place, the prices are going to go up. So Julie asks, what have the results been from your past students for the last few years? Well, we have lots of students that get lots of deals. They're constantly working, but that's a difficult question to answer. You would have to, and that's why I asked the PPG students, do me a favor, post some positive or post whatever you want. I don't care. It can be positive or negative. But post some what your opinions are, because folks like Julie, she's not able to sit there and talk to you guys like we do live, because normally we do this live and we invite you to come in for your first one free, and then we talk about it. So if you're a PPG member, please do me a favor and post what your opinion is, so that someone like Julie would go, okay, is that something that I might be interested in? And I can tell you that the 1997 or whatever price we put it at, I think it was 1997. You won't even be able, in another week or so, you won't even be able to buy the home study courses for that. So the price that we're giving you is literally a steal. And until you actually get in it and get involved with it and really talk to people about it, you're going to have to kind of take my word for it until you see some comments on the screen. And you can kind of go through, like Johnny says, PPG is really the best program to purchase. You will not waste your money. Alan made another comment. So just kind of go back through and read all the comments that someone put out there, and it'll kind of give you an idea. If you want, we can get you in touch with some of these folks if you're still not sure. You have a few days, because I put an end to this. I put Sunday is the end to this pricing. So after Sunday, this pricing goes away, and it goes back up to the $29.97 for all cash. So if you want to save some money, now's the time to jump on it. Let's see. So hopefully, Vincent, that helped you with your question. All right. Anybody else have any other questions before we get started? Because I'm going to tell you how my day went. And normally, this is what we would normally be covering tonight. We would normally be covering lease options, and I wanted to talk with sellers, and I wanted to talk. I had a guest scheduled to come on to talk about, how to find private lenders, and I asked him not to come tonight. I postponed him tonight. And the reason was, today we had a one-on-one coaching call at 10 o'clock, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a little upside down. I'm sleeping when I should be awake, and I'm awake when I should be sleeping, and so on and so forth. So if you're like me, hopefully you're not like me, but a lot of you have been telling me that you are like me. Jonathan, thank you very much. Said phenomenal program, really helps. But if you're like me, your internal clock is all messed up. So I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I was up till 3, 4, 5 o'clock messing around. It's very productive for me. I have to say, I'm very productive from the administrative side. All the other stuff is kind of going by the wayside. But from administrative stuff, getting like pardon my language, all my shit together, that's going pretty well. Okay. So I had this 10 o'clock call, and it went well. This is all for the one-on-one students that we meet. I do one-on-one coaching as well, and I meet those one-on-one students on Wednesday and Friday. Now on Zoom calls. So normally it's one-on-one face-to-face, but since the pandemic, you got to do what you got to do, right? So, anyways, I went to the bathroom this morning, and all of a sudden my toilet made this groan, and water just started coming out everywhere. So needless to say, I had to call a plumber, call my insurance company, because fortunately for me, it's above my garage. My bathroom is above my garage, and all the water just basically destroyed my garage. So everything that was underneath it, everything. So I have literally in fact, all my stuff in the garage is still out in my front yard. So after this call, I got to go out and put it all away before it rains tonight. So that is how my day has gone. So that's why I don't really want to spend the normal 3 or 3.5 hours on here tonight. We're going to shorten this up a bit, but I promise I will make it up to you. In fact, we'll do a few more sessions. I'll do some YouTube sessions to make it up as far as the content. But tonight we're going to be talking about lease options, probably an hour, hour and a half, and then I'm going to call it a night for tonight. And I apologize if you were expecting my normal 3-hour wait or 3-hour session, but yeah, Walter says you need a big blue hurricane tarp like we use in Florida. Well, I had a restoration company come, and that's pretty much what my garage looks like. It's just everything. So Dustin, can you never mind. Anyways, so with that being said, that's how my day has gone. And so we're going to talk about sandwich lease options tonight. But before I do that, I just want to here, by the way, this is the pricing that I said. If you're interested in PPG, normally I would tell you the pricing at the end, but I'm going to tell you at the beginning because I'm going to move on, and this is going to be a unique. But the special is $19.97, and in order to get the special, you need to go to PPG Coaching, or you can call Chrissy. You can put in information, but you can get PPG, and there's a coupon code. Type in PPG Special, and that'll take an additional, couple $1,000 off, or whatever it is, $2,000 or $2,000. I can't remember, whatever the price is. So that's all what I wanted to tell you about that. I also want to reiterate about this weekend. I want you, if you're planning on taking advantage and understanding the market that we're in and how that's going to affect you, you need to understand how to use and thrive with owner financing. And we're going to kick this off this session on the 25th with creative deal structuring. And that session is going to teach you all of the opportunities that there are, such as wraparound mortgage, subject to, owner finance, options, all those. We're going to teach you about all of those. And then going forward, we're going to get into very specific details of that. So like next month, the next month's seminar is all about subject to and how somebody can deed over the property to you. So that's next month's workshop. So this month is creative deal structuring. It's going to kind of give you a much broader picture of all the tools that you need to learn in your toolbox. We'll talk to you a little bit about how to structure them. But then next month, we're going to be talking about subject to and wraparound mortgages, and then building on that. So then in the coming months, we're going to be talking about private lending, because in my opinion, private lending is the next biggest piece that you will need, because guess what? If banks aren't lending or their requirements go up, then you are screwed, as you will. All right, so Gustavo put out there, great program, worth every penny, and this is a promotional price. It's freaking steal, so take advantage of it. Thanks, Gustavo. That's a big ass picture of you. I'm not quite sure how to make that smaller, but you look good. All right. So anyways, we'll take that down and we'll get started. So tonight I want to talk about, we've been talking about owner finance. So if you're brand new and let me get to the presentation here. Give me 1 second. I'm looking away from the camera, but, we talked about, and I'm not going to pull these up because they're animated slides. So I'm going to give you a much bigger picture of all the slides. Let me do it this way so that you can see it. We talked about subject to and what a subject to transaction is. And if you weren't part of these sessions, like we've talked about that like 2 or 3 weeks ago, don't worry about it, because we're going to do it all again. We're going to talk more about it again on Saturday. So we talked about how somebody could give you all the paperwork, the flow of everything, and how a real estate transaction works. How each subject to paperwork flows, why somebody would do that. Then we went in and talked, the next week we talked about wraparound mortgage and why you would use a wraparound mortgage versus a subject to, when you would use that, okay, when you wouldn't use that. Then we talked about different types of wraps. We talked about what we call mirror wraps, which mirror the underlying payment. Which I don't know if Kim's on tonight, but she just did basically a mirror wrap. Let me see if she's on. She is not on. But Kim, one of our PPG students, she just did a deal. And so Julie, this goes back to you. Kim would be a good one to talk to. She's an investor that's very seasoned, but loves PPG. God, I sound like Donald Trump. Isn't that right? We could do great things. It's awesome. But wraparound mortgage, we do wraparound on terms where you buy it at one rate and then you increase it to get a spread in the middle, get a spread on the back end, and a down payment. Thanks, Mike, for your comments. Mike said, I wish I knew then what I know now. Okay. And then we're going to talk. Then last week we talked about true owner finance when properties are owned free and clear. We went over an easy piece of software that I have that I give to the PPG students, and we'll talk more about even that tonight. But tonight I want to talk about sandwich lease options, why it's important, what you can do with them. Then I'm going to open it up to any questions. And if you have questions, please, by all means, start asking them now because, like I said, I got questions all over the place here. So I'm going to try to move this around so I can see it. I'm going to try to end this thing tonight a little bit quicker than I normally would. Normally I also have an agenda, which I already have planned out. I didn't get to any of that, so please accept my apologies. This isn't a normal meeting. I normally have a nice agenda. We go through the agenda. We talk about networking. We talk about PPG. I usually cover a book that I'm reading, which, by the way, I'm not reading any book right now at the moment. They're all kind of shelved. I usually have an app, a piece of technology that I like to share with folks. I don't really have one of those. Let me see real quick if I had anything that jumps out at me. Although I've been talking, I don't know if we talked about it. And tell me, someone make a comment if I've already talked about this at last week's PPG meeting. But there is a piece of software. If you have an iPad or you have a computer, I think it'll work on any PC or anything. It's called Canva. Let's see. Does the price? So one of the questions is, does this price include additional seminars like the one this weekend? Everything's included. Once you pay that one fee, everything's included. And even the seminars that I do, they're all streamed. So even if you're out of state, you get to watch them for free. So those seminars range anywhere from $99 up to $300 or $400, depending on if it's a boot camp. All of that is a one-time cost. It's a platinum. You get one. Once you're a PPG member, you're in. You're golden, right? Do you ever use novation agreements? I don't know what novation agreements are. Achille Taylor? I don't know. I hope I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that. Okay, so there's a question from Brian on how you handle insurance. We'll get to some of those questions in a minute, but I wanted to share with you this software. So one of the things I like to do at PPG is talk about marketing. We talk about money a lot of times, how to get money, and then we talk about all the different techniques. That's usually the three things. So depending on when you come into PPG, people go, well, you've already been meeting for 6 or 7 weeks or whatever it's been. Is that going to be an issue? No, because we cover everything. We're very extensive and we're covering marketing constantly. By the way, PPG folks that have been asking me about the marketing, it is up on the site now. It just doesn't have artwork. So it's got really crappy artwork that Jim put up there, but the videos are up there. So if you are interested and you would like to see it or like to participate or watch it, it's up there. It's just not very pretty with the nice thumbnails like the other courses have. That's coming shortly. I just had a conversation today. So, but this is all about marketing. And did I tell somebody that's a PPG member, put in the comment for me, did I already mention this? Yes, you did mention Canva last week. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. Okay. So I won't go into that. I think I'm getting old like my mother, and my mother used to tell me the same story. Like I'd talk to her every few days and she'd say, "Did I tell you this?" And I'm like, "Yes, Mom, you already told me that." But I talked to so many people, so I don't know. Now, Tamika, yes, we did talk about it as a coaching group, but I knew that. But the cool thing about this, for those of you that are new, is this is a one-stop shop. It has Instagram posts. It has all your social media, and it sizes it correctly. So you'll see down here, like these are my designs. You'll see the design I just popped up there a few minutes ago. And if I wanted to, I could go direct to Facebook. I could download that directly to Facebook. So there's a lot of the PPG coaching. So it's pretty cool. I'm creating a backdrop for when I do interviews so that my interviewee is here in the big screen and I'm in the little screen, the video. So you can do an amazing amount of stuff with that. So anyways, the name of the app is called Canva. Let me put it up. Let's see, Canva. Canva. And there's a little learning curve. I will tell you, you have to play with it. It's not going to be, it's not bad. I mean, it's pretty intuitive. But it's pretty intuitive, but it does have a little learning curve. So, but it's great because you can size these things however you want. All right, so let's talk about sandwich lease options. How many people here, put your hands down here. So, how many people here do not know what a sandwich lease option is? Raise your hand. So we got 9, 10, 11, 12. And just so you know, there's about 70 people on the call coming and going. All right. Let's see. All right. So if I'm looking around, that's because I got three different screens up here because they're all small and they're not big enough. So, all right. So we got 13 people that raised their hands out of 70, which is pretty normal, I guess. So a lease with an option is, so let's start with this. Y'all know what a lease is, right? So a lease is when you go to rent something. And the best way I can describe it is when you go to rent, you have your tenant. They don't own it. They have no ownership in this at all. They're just simply leasing the property. And that lease, I mean, could be as simple as putting it on a piece of paper here. I mean, you can do any agreement that we do in real estate, you can do pretty much on a piece of paper, napkin, as they say, right? I don't necessarily recommend that, but you can do that if you so choose. So, whoops. Let me see if we've got, I think I got another comment. Let's see where to go. Nope, no more comments. Okay, good. But you can do all of this on a piece of paper, right? Again, I don't recommend it, but most people put it a lease. Now, some leases are better than others. Some refer to what they call cross collateral in the agreements, and I'll put those agreements up here shortly. Let me log in. Let me get those agreements for you. So so I'm going to put my screen up here, and it's not really going to be what I call super pretty, but these are the documents. I want you to write these documents down. So when you do a lease with an option to purchase, okay, so when we start talking about, let's do it this way. So when we start talking about a lease with an option to purchase, or sometimes people tend to call them lease purchases. Well, there is a distinct difference between the two. There is a lease involved in both of those. So it is involved, there's a lease, but the secondary document that you're dealing with is different. For example, a lease option is you've got a lease, and then you have an option agreement, which is an option to purchase or an option not to purchase. So I can or I don't have to, right? It just gives me the option to do it. I'm not required to do it. There's no purchase and sale agreement that says I'm purchasing it. I have an option. Whereas a lease purchase, the documents are similar but different. You have an option agreement, but then you have a purchase agreement. You actually sign a purchase and sale agreement that says, I am going to purchase this at a future date for this price, and here's all the terms that apply. So when you start thinking, sometimes people use these, what we call synonymously, lease option, a lease purchase. We talk about them as they're the same. They're not really the same. They are inherently different. Although we tend to lump them under the same category. So in your hierarchy of things, so I want to talk about what goes into a lease with an option to purchase. So when we get it, so let's take a second and let's talk about the what is about to happen in the pandemic and how things are going to flow. Okay. Right now, I haven't seen the unemployment numbers, but last I checked, they were over 22 million Americans unemployed. Now, we all know that is a very inflated number, and it's a misnomer, right? Because the minute this pandemic or the stay at home or stay in place or shelter in place, whatever it's called, goes away and we start going back, a lot of these jobs will bounce back. But a lot of them, guess what? Aren't. They won't, because a lot of these businesses may be out of business. So I want you to start thinking, if you're brand new and you haven't been through, okay, again, I'm going to have you raise your hand again. Raise your hand if you are new to the point where you did if you're old enough, you've all been through 2008 meltdown. Raise your hand if you were in real estate, creative real estate, like we're doing, if you went through that debacle. Raise your hand if you did go through that. So there's 70, there's 73 people on the call. So I'm going to give you a comparison. So please, if you're listening and you were in the real estate world like me or Chrissy or Dustin or whoever else has been around, if you went through that debacle and you made it through and you were working in real estate the whole time, please raise your hand. Because right now there's only 4 people that raised their hand. Now either that tells me one of two things, 5. Either you're not paying attention to me, which is possible, 6, or we got a whole bunch of new folks in the game right now. And what the point is, you don't know what you don't know right now. So, okay, you can all put your hands down now. I'll lower. Don't worry about it. So what does that mean? that means that you guys don't know what you don't know right now. You don't know what's ahead of you. So in 2008, I feel like I've told this thing over and over and over. In 2008, um, we went through that. That was horrible. They termed that as the Great Recession, not a depression, but a recession, right? And but that was all self-imposed. All of that was self-imposed, meaning the banks had shitty paperwork, they had bad practices, bad paper, bad everything, right? Across the board. That was a self-imposed, self-inflicted gunshot wound to them, right? And they deserved every bit of it. And I'm sorry that more banks didn't go out and they basically went to the government and had stimulus money, right? Because they had really bad loans. But that was pretty much the only element that kind of went in the crapper. There were some other things, ancillary things that kind of got pulled down with it, and the whole economy kind of got drugged down. But not like we're seeing today. Now, it took us the better part of 10 years to drag ourselves out of that 2008 Great Recession. And, real estate as a whole goes like this. It goes in a cycle. You have a seller's market, then a buyer's market, then a transition into a seller's market, then a transition into a buyer's market, et cetera, et cetera. It goes like this. And historically, it has been about every 10 to 12 years, that cycle repeats, right? So if we're in a buyer's market today, 10 years, 10, 12 years from now, we're going to be in a buyer's market again. Or if we're in a seller's market, et cetera, et cetera. That's historically how it's been. Now, because of the Great Recession, we've gone a little bit longer than historical. So that happened in 2008. We're now 2020. That's 12 years. Okay. 12 years it's happened. And normally it's been around 10. So we've kind of rode that wave a little bit longer than historically we should have. Prior to this, what you saw or what you were seeing, or all of us were seeing, is we were seeing a slowdown in the market. Anybody that's been around long enough has seen this. We started to see prices come down. People were still buying, don't get me wrong, but houses were sitting longer than they used to. And people were starting to cut prices because of stuff they bought 6 or 8 months ago are finally getting on the market. Well, when they bought them, they used a higher ARV than they probably should have. And it naturally kind of forced them to drop their price, right? But the buying market was still pretty strong. If you talk to any agent, they would still tell you that we were still pretty much in a seller's market. Well, guess what? This whole pandemic shot that whole thing in the rear end, because we went from having one of the strongest economies in our history to now having record levels of unemployment. Over 22 million. I haven't seen the numbers. And if Scott's on, he's usually one good for giving me, not Scott, Philip is usually, newest number is I told you he's always good for stats. Philip's always good for stats. Brian, I'm going to ask you, if I don't get, because I'm going to scroll down some of these, if I don't get to your question, please ask it again later. Because I don't know how far, but 1 in 7, Philip said, is unemployed. Okay. So why is that important to you? And why have we just spent the last 3 to 4 weeks? And why are we spending the next 3 to 4 months talking to you about all these creative ways? Now, we always teach creative ways. That's just what we do. But there's still a lot of people out there that don't know how to do the creative side. They don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to do the creative owner financing. And those are the folks that, if you're one of those, there's hope. So I don't want to say, okay, you're doomed. You're only doomed if you don't get educated on how to buy creatively. Now, I mentioned this before. You've got to learn, in order to buy creatively, you've got to understand, and that's what this weekend is all about, creative deal structuring. It's giving you, interjecting into you all the tools that you can stick in your toolbox, so that when you sit down with your seller and you understand the problem, you can say, well, I have a tool to fix that, or I have some way to help you. So just so you know, that's the whole design of this weekend. And then the following subsequent weekends are designed to give you more in-depth, like the subject to, how do you do the paperwork and so on and so forth. We'll talk about paperwork this weekend and all different things, but I don't expect you to walk out of there Saturday being an expert. Nobody does. Nobody will. So the goal for this weekend is to teach you what you need to understand, what is possible out there for you to use in your arsenal. So that's what the design is. So let me keep going, because I do have a point here, because there's techniques. So if we go back to my spreadsheet, or not my spreadsheet, but my iPad. In order to be a problem solver, right? In order to be a problem solver, you've got to know what the problem is. Prior to this catastrophic crash, right? We went from literally 60 to 0 overnight. You could, and there's a lot of wholesalers out there, you could literally go, and if whatever the seller wanted for the property, you could literally give them exactly what they wanted with very little negotiating, if any, and then take that contract and go out there and shop that contract around. And because inventory was so low, it was a feeding frenzy, and people didn't know any better, and they didn't experience that prior to that. They were buying stuff well over what they should have been. And so now that's all going to go away, because remember, with this 22 million people that are unemployed, majority of those will go back to work, but a lot of them will not, which is going to create businesses that go out of business, which means they won't be making their mortgage payment. You have landlords who the tenants aren't paying them. So you're going to have landlords who were normally okay, but now if they have multiple properties and they themselves live paycheck to paycheck, and they weren't a real good negotiator or didn't have a lot of cash flow, those properties are going to be going into foreclosure as well. You're going to have tenants that are going to get evicted because the landlords are tired of their crap and not paying, and they're going to get evicted. Now, everyone's probably saying, well, what, the government's going to take care of you? If you really, raise your hand if you really believe that's true. I'll wait. Not a single hand was raised. And that's good, because the government, although they have good intentions, they aren't state specific. All these laws that we're talking about, all these foreclosures, all these rentals, all these things that we're talking about here, they aren't necessarily federal guidelines. They are all state specific. So for example, like Brian, I don't know Brian, are you from Chattanooga or are you from Tampa? Because I know a Brian Thompson in Chattanooga. So is that you? Anyways, so depending on what state you're in, you have a different procedure. And unless the federal government convinces the governor or the state assembly to change state laws, it doesn't matter what the federal government says. It's all state specific. It's just like Governor Kemp said, okay, we're going to lift the stay in place. Well, the federal government didn't have a say in that. That's all based on his decision. Same thing goes with foreclosures. Same thing goes with evictions. Now, they can go along with, in addition to, but the federal government can highly recommend, but they cannot dictate. The only thing they can dictate is federally backed loans. FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FDIC or FDA loans, those types of loans, right? Or Section 8 or any government program that the government is in charge of, right? So that's going to change. So we've got an enormous amount of opportunity. So the question is, let's see, predicting 4.3 million new unemployment this week to bring the total to 26 million people. That's a scary number. And so for those of you that are new, you need to learn these creative techniques. You need to learn certain buzzwords and what they mean and how they affect people, such as deferment. The word deferment, what is it? How does it affect you? We're going to talk about that on Saturday, what a deferment is. We're going to talk about a short sale, how important that's going to be becoming, and forbearance. If you don't know what any of these things are, you need to look them up. You need to understand them. You don't have to be a pro at them. You just need to understand what they are and then talk to people on how they affect them. Because, for example, the banks are talking about forbearance, and that's where they take the money that you're behind. So they'll give you a 6-month forbearance, meaning they won't charge you 6 months. Well, that doesn't mean they're going to forgive them. That just means they're going to forbear them. That means they're going to take that and they're going to expect payment for that later. And typically what happens is, let's say your mortgage payment's $1,000. Well, if you don't make your mortgage payments for 6 months, that's $6,000. Well, at the end of that 6 months, guess what the bank wants? They want their $6,000 back. Well, most people aren't going to have $6,000, so they'll work something out. I'm sure the federal government's going to strong arm them to do some kind of program because all these banks won't want to take back all these properties in foreclosure. So they will work with someone, not because the federal government requires them, but because it's a survival method for them. They can't incur all these foreclosures. They would literally die like they did in 2008, where all these banks had all these defaults and the FDIC came in and basically wiped them out and said, nope, sorry, we're going to revoke you. So the forbearance, for example, that's where they take that and they may say to you, okay, well, you don't have to pay it all back right away, but we'll spread that out over 6 months or we'll spread that out over 12 months. Well, if they can't make their monthly mortgage, their $1,000 monthly mortgage payment, guess what? They're not going to be able to make their $1,000 plus the $250 they just tacked on to make their mortgage payment $250. And if you think for a minute that governments aren't being taxed, meaning stressed, and their finances, so what's going to happen to taxes? What's going to happen to all this stuff down the road? Taxes are going to go up, insurance is going to go up, all this stuff's going to go up eventually. So I say all of that not to scare the crap out of you, but to warn you and to prepare you that in order for you to solve people's problems, you've got to have all of these tools in your toolbox. So the creative deal structuring class on Saturday is going to cover all of these buying strategies. Subject to, agreement for deed, wraparound mortgages, owner finance. These are the ones we've covered over the last few weeks. Tonight, we're talking about sandwich lease options or wholesale lease options. And we may even cover options depending on how much time I have. But then you've got a whole other subset you've got short sales. What does that mean? How is that going to affect you? So you need to understand what a forbearance is so that when you sit down with your homeowner, they're going to say, hey, I want all cash. And you're going to tell them, guess what? I can't pay you all cash. Because you won't be able to go out and find a buyer for that if you're trying to wholesale it or if you're trying to use bank financing. So you need to get creative with this stuff. As we transition, and I hate to say we're going to transition pretty quickly. Normally, it was a pretty slow transition into a buyer's market, but I think we're going to be rapidly in a buyer's market, more so than we anticipated. And we're going to need this stuff quickly. So what I've been educating all of my coaching students on is take and use this time wisely. You should be talking to people on the phone, getting better at negotiating. That was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to sellers tonight. I just didn't have time to prepare everything. That's the other reason why I wanted to talk about private lending tonight. So we'll just move that to next week. But those things are going to be paramount to you. If you can't go to the bank and find these, I mean, in the past, you've been talking about how many people, raise your hand if you've heard this BRRRR method. What, I don't even know what it stands for. BRRRR. What's it stand for? Somebody write it out. Buy whatever. Let's see. I don't know. So here's a comment that Valerie put out there on YouTube. See if I can. Wow, Valerie, you're pretty. I don't know why that's so big. That's Valerie doing a. What the heck is that? Sorry, you were really super big there. But let's see, what was the question that I asked? I got excited that I had a comment. Oh yeah, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. That's the BRRRR method. Okay. Guess what? I hate to say it, but that's out the window. Because I shouldn't say it. None of these techniques that have worked in the past, or they'll all continue to work. Okay. But to the extent is where we don't know. You know, like some lenders are going to just basically go away because they don't want to take the risk. And some of you are asking, well, why all of a sudden are the interest rates not going down? They're going up. But raise your hand if you're wondering that. Why are they going up instead of down? Actually, I put all your hands are all still up. So we got a bunch of people. So you're wondering why they're going up and not down. You would think that in this day and age, they should go down. Well, guess what? The reason they're not going down is because these lenders have to have an appealing product to sell when this is all over. And a lot of the people that are lending aren't the big boys. They are the little mom and pops of the world. And they don't lend their own cash. What they do is they use a warehouse line, they refinance your property or get you a new loan, and then they package those and they sell those off to someone else. Well, the problem with that is if that package isn't appealing enough when they go to sell that, if the economy collapses, they're stuck with all those loans and they're having to self-service and for themselves, right? And that ties up all of their liquid cash. So they can't lend out anymore. So they're dead in the water. So just so you know why you're seeing what you're seeing, that's why, because these things have to be written to the point where when this is all over, these small mom and pops can sell these loans. Okay? So hopefully that made sense to you. So why are we doing all of this? Let me go back to lease options. So let's talk about lease options for a second. So when I mentioned lease options, I put this back up there and said, okay, let's talk about that. And you have a lease, you have an option. Now, in the hierarchy of what I think people are going to want to do, and I started to, this is what, in my opinion, this is the order on the buying strategies in which you would try to get a deal. You're almost always going to try to buy it subject to. If the seller doesn't want or the deal doesn't support that, then you move down to the next line, agreement for deed or a wraparound mortgage or owner finance or a sandwich. And as the further you move down that list, the less appealing they become to me. So you'll notice where sandwich lease option and wholesale lease option are. They're further down that list on the left-hand side. Now, it's not that they're not a good strategy to use, not at all. But what you're faced with when you do that is you don't own the property. In a sandwich lease, it's a sublease. So if you're from New York or you live up in New York, you all know what subleases are. You lease it from the owner and then you turn around and you lease it out to somebody else. Well, that's what we call a sandwich lease option. Someone said they call them something differently now. There's a new word for them. I don't know. But so a sandwich lease option is you lease it from the homeowner for one amount, and then you turn around and you lease option it out to someone else, whereas you stay in the middle. All right. So thus, this little scenario right here, a lease with an option to buy. So you have two agreements. You have a lease. So let's pretend you, as the investor, are the blue guy. You're Mr. Blue, right? I'm sorry, I take that back. You are the investor. You're Mr. White in the middle, or Mrs. White in the middle. The person, your seller, whoever you're buying it from or leasing it from, is Mr. Blue. So you go out and you find Mr. Blue. Mr. Blue has this property that he owes $95,000. His payment is $950. Now, you know that because you were smart and you went through the materials and you got taught how to ask the right 20 questions to get the information that you need to make these decisions. Because how do you solve a problem? You got to first know what the problem is. In order to know what the problem is, you got to ask the right questions. So the days of you just going, oh, the seller wants, 110,000. Okay, I'll put it under contract for 110. No, you've got to know your numbers going forward. If you want to make it through this alive, you got to know your numbers. You have to understand what a good deal looks like. You have to get better at negotiating. Okay? So ask the right questions. The seller says, I want 95,000. That's what I owe. That's what I want. But maybe they have good credit. Maybe they have two payments and they don't want to make the second payment or can't afford to make the second payment, but they don't want to give away the deed, meaning they don't want to give away the ownership. They still want to retain ownership. This is why it is down on my list, further down the totem pole, because I have no ownership in this. I have controlling interest. I control it, right? And I can make money, but I just want people to understand what these different techniques are and how you can use them. So from a buy perspective, it's always better to buy something subject to or do a wraparound mortgage or owner finance or something like that. It's always better for you, the investor, to buy that way. And then when you turn around, you go out and you sell on a sandwich lease option, especially if the person doesn't have a lot of money to put down. And the whole reason I tell you all about how bad everything is it sets the tone to inform you that people aren't going to have a lot of money. But that doesn't mean you have to stop buying and selling real estate. What that means is you have to change how you do it. So in this case, you have a lease and you have an option to purchase. So in this case, my lease says, Mr. Blue, I'm going to lease it from you for $950. Okay? I'm also going to take an option to buy your property. Now that option may be a year, it may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, whatever the option, and I will tell you, the longer the option, the better. And these are simple. There's many ways you can deal with options. I mean, there's people out there that literally it's an art form in dealing with options and how they handle them. So I'm telling you this in the very basic form. So there's many creative ways to use options, but that's for a more advanced class. So let's just talk about the basics right now. So an option is basically, Mr. Seller, I want to have the option to buy this property. And I want to have the option to buy it for what's owed, $95,000. Well, maybe the person that you're buying it from owes 90 and you want to give them 5. So you're going to say, I want to option it for 95,000. So you give them a little bit, right? Same thing goes with the payment. Well, maybe their payment's 950, maybe it's not, but you're willing to pay 950. So if their payment's 700, great, they make $250 as the lease, right? As that lease. So those two documents you have in hand now. Now you turn around and you market that out to your tenant buyer, someone that doesn't have a lot of money and may not have perfect credit, which when you're in an environment like this, you're going to have both of those scenarios. So now you market that, and instead of marketing it for what you have it under contract for, 95,000, you're going to say that I want to option that property for $150,000. Okay, so on Saturday, we're going to talk to you about what number you should use, because they always tell you, if you listen to certain people, they're going to say, if you own or finance it or you offer good terms, you can jack the price way up. Yes and no. It depends on if you want to get rid of this thing or not. If you truly, truly want to get rid of it, you can't jack it up over what an appraisal would give it. Because when an appraiser comes in to appraise it, if it doesn't appraise, you ain't selling it anyways. So just so you know. So let's say we find our tenant buyer, Mr. Green, and we give him an option to buy it from us at $150, and we lease it to him for $1,250. So, and this guy has $5,000 to put down. Now, obviously, we get into the art of how do you talk to these people. That's part of the details of this. That's part of, if you want to learn this particular strategy, you got to get into the details. Like, how do you have a conversation with them? Do you say, how much do you have to put down? Or do you just say, or do you say, I want $5,000 down? In my opinion, you never tell somebody how much you want to put down. You say, what do you have to put down? You let them tell you. Because if I say, look, I need 5,000 down, and they have 10, they're going to say, okay, I have 5. And you're going to, but if you say, how much do you have to put down? And they say, well, I have 10,000. Then you can say, you know what, man, you're good. That's exactly what I need. So you don't want to undercut yourself. So you never, the age old thing for negotiating, he who speaks first loses. So you never want to speak first. So think about this. On a lease, sandwich lease option, you've got 3 paydays. The first payday is what somebody's bringing to the table as a non-refundable option consideration. So when they write that option agreement, they are going to put down an option fee. That option fee in that agreement, that's why you should have the right agreements, and ours has it. In that agreement, it says that option fee is non-refundable. Okay, so they pay that $5,000. Now it goes towards the price of the purchase. They don't lose it in most cases. That you can set that up so that it does go to the purchase price. So in this case, they owe the purchase price was $150. They put $5,000 down. When they go to pay it off 2 years from now, or whatever the term is, they would need to pay off $145 because they had already given you $5,000. Okay. So the first payday is what they have to put down. The second payday is what the difference is in between what your payment is to Mr. Blue and what his payment is, what Mr. Green's payment is to you. So in this case, he's paying $1,250 to me. I'm paying $950 to Mr. Blue, so I keep $300 in the middle. So it's like a rent payment, right? And that's exactly what it is. It's considered rent. It's the difference. So I got 2 paydays out of that. Then whatever that option agreement says, that's how long they have to option that property and to buy that thing out from under you. So in this case, $150,000, they will have put $5,000 down. So that means you got $5,000. And then when they go to exercise that option or refinance it, however you want to term it, 2 years from now, a year from now, 6 months from now, whatever it is, that loan is going to be for $150,000, and then you'll get an additional third payout, which we call the back end, of $50,000. Okay, so you will have made a total of $55,000 in profit plus the $300 a month cash flow, forever how long you held it. So with that being said, questions. Let me start with that. So I'm going to go and get some questions because hopefully I'll have some. What percentage of your lease option tenants cash you out? Great question, Michael. Great question. It all depends on how you do the front end of this. And this gets into more of the dynamics of it. But for example, when I first started this many, many years ago, over 20 years ago, I did lots of lease options. I would buy subject to, and then I would lease option it out. And what I found was when I first started, I didn't know any better. I didn't know as they say, ass from apple butter in this. Didn't know how to spell real estate. So I just did what other gurus, other people at the front of the room told me to do. And they said, if the tenant has a 3% to put down, put them in the house. And if the house, let's say the house would appraise for 150, they told me you can ask 160 or 170 because you're offering good terms. You can offer whatever you want. So I did. And what I found was less than 10%, less than 3% of all my lease purchase tenant buyers, when I did it that way, cashed me out. Less than 10%, much less than 10%. Okay. And I found out not very quickly. It took me a year or two to figure this out because they didn't come due. Well, what happened was, since I pushed the price too high, and even though they were working on their credit, once they got their credit fixed, guess what they did? They didn't really like the house to begin with, or they trashed it. And now that their credit's fixed, then they moved out. And since they only put down 3% or a little bit of money, they was like, that's just the cost of this. They went and bought the house that they wanted. And they moved out of mine. So now let's say they gave me $3,000 down. Well, when they moved out, what do I have to put back in to the property to get it back to a sellable position to get another lease purchase tenant? Because you'll hear gurus, and I freaking hate when they do this. They'll say, oh yeah, I would love lease options because I hope they never buy it. Because you just keep doing it over and you make a ton of money. You just keep doing it over and over. Bullshit. That is someone who doesn't do this business, that doesn't do lease options and doesn't know what the hell they're talking about and doesn't want to sell houses, because every time you turn a tenant, you have to take, unless they're giving you a large down payment, and typically they won't, you're taking that money and putting it right back into the place. So that all the money you thought you made, when they leave and they move out, you're putting it back in. So you're not making a lot of money. It sounds good in front of a seminar to sell you a course, but in reality, it doesn't work that way. So I found a different way. So what I started to do instead is when I found somebody, I got a mortgage broker, and Mike Bancroft is on here. So if you need somebody to do this, give him a call. He's a PPG member, also a one-on-one coaching student. He's a loan officer as well. But Mike used to work with me years ago, like 15 years ago, right? Doing this. And I would give Mike the application. Mike would look at the application. He would run their debt to income ratio. He wouldn't necessarily pull their credit right out of the gate. He would look at what their income was and what the price of the property was, and he would run a quick scenario and say, do they qualify on their debt to income ratio? Forget about what they have to put down for the minute. Do they qualify for what their income is? And if they couldn't, then I had a choice. I mean, chances are they're not going to get a loan, so they're a long-term tenant. So if I wanted to cash this deal out, that would not be my ideal candidate. So then once they passed that little litmus test, then Mike would run their credit and look at their credit and go, okay, they're a 650. They need this, this, and this done. Yeah, I could probably get them a loan if they worked hard enough, 6 months to a year. We got to fix up these 3 or 4 credit. Now, I will take someone like that I can fix up their credit, than if somebody were to give me $5,000 or $6,000 down as opposed to $3,000 down, but I didn't run their credit and I found out later that they have child support, or they owe the IRS $200,000 and they'll never get a loan. Well, then that $5,000 didn't mean squat to me. Now it's just a renter. And if that's what you want, then that's different. But if you want to get that back end out from under that $50,000 that we've been talking about, yeah, that's not the right way. You don't just take anybody that has money down the road. I made that mistake early, and I don't teach people that now, because I teach people you can increase your price, but you don't do it so much that when they go to cash out, they either look at that price and go, I'm not paying that exorbitant price. I want to move out now that my credit's fixed and go buy something else that I can't afford. Or when they get their appraisal, their appraiser comes in and goes, yeah, they're not paying 150. This thing's only worth 130. Well, guess what? You're stuck. You got to do 130 or you're not doing anything, right? So you got to lower it or you're not selling it. So I wasn't smart enough back then because I was listening to too many people, and it got me through it. Don't get me wrong, but I give people much better advice now. So that's what happens. So I send them to Mike out of the gate. Mike says, okay, I can get somebody qualified. Then I look at their down payment and say, is it acceptable? And then what they do is I bring them in. I actually put them down and I have them fill out a loan application. I actually have them sit down in front of a professional and do that, because it creates the mindset that they're actually buying this house and they take care of it better, et cetera, et cetera. That's how I do it. I don't know if that was the and I flip-flopped that number. So then I went 8 out of 10 used to buy my houses versus less than 1 out of 10. So Michael, I hope that answers your question. Let's see. How much average option deposit as a percentage of the house price do you get from your tenant? This is where I got to tell you, stop listening to people's percentages. Okay? This is where you're listening to a guru try to sell you something versus someone that does it trying to give you some good advice. Someone that knows what they're doing on negotiating. It's not about what percentage. It's about getting everything they got. Right? So when somebody comes to me, now I do have a number in mind that is a drop dead. Just like when I buy or when I sell, if it drops below that, or I go, nope, I'm out. And that number is usually 3%. If I can't get at least 3%, I'm not selling it to them, right? But I never go and say, look, do you have 3% down? Hell no, don't do that. Just say, well, I'm really flexible with down payment. What kind of down payment? What's the most down payment you can come up with? By you saying I'm really flexible, that says, okay, he's flexible. But then you don't give them a number. How much can you come up with? And they say, well, if you say 3% and that 3% equals $3,000, and you tell them, hey, I want 3%, they go, okay, 3,000. But if you say, what's the most you can come up with? You can say, well, I can come up with 5, but I might be able to borrow an extra 2 if that helps. Perfect. Then 7's my number. From a negotiating standpoint, you could even say, well, we were looking for a little bit more than that, but if that's the most you can come up with, we can maybe work with that. Because it's all about how you negotiate. And I'm telling you folks, If you want to thrive in the upcoming market, it is your ability to negotiate is going to be your saving grace. The better you negotiate, the better price, the better you educate your seller, the more you help your seller. Because in this business, you right now, or when we were in our seller's market, you were helping your seller because you were paying them what they wanted. Notice I used the word want. In this market, it's now no longer about what they want. It's about servicing what they need. Big difference. So unfortunately, I was on a call, I think it was Shark Tank last month, and Scott Sekula, if you know him, he made a comment. He goes, I'm looking for steals now. He buys a lot of properties. He goes, I'm looking for steals, not deals. Now, and that's a great moniker. I'm looking for steals, not deals. And that's the people who are buying properties now, people who actually have cash, they're not looking for deals right now. They're looking for steals because I hate to say this because it sounds terrible, but people are lining up and they're like sharks in the water, just waiting, sitting back and waiting. That's why you're not going to see a whole lot of stuff, okay, happen. But where you can differentiate yourself from some of these other sharks, right, is figure out what the problem is and help them through the problem. Cash isn't always the one thing that solves all problems. It may be something else. And there's going to be a lot of people that cash isn't going to be their solution, because when we buy cash, people who lend to us, if you don't have all this cash, you're going to borrow this, you're going to borrow at less than 70%. In fact, I just had a call with Glenn Glasper was on Big this past Monday, Beginners Investor Group. And then I had an interview with him on my podcast yesterday, and we talked about the same thing. You know, you're not going to see that it's not going to be the same, right? So people are looking for steals, not deals now. All right, so let me kind of go back to where I lost my track of where I was going. But so in this market, you're going to want to help them. And you can only help them by finding out what the problem is. We've always said from day one, I've been teaching this for 20 some years, you want to find people that are in need to sell, not a want to sell. And for the longest time, a lot of sellers have been want to sells. And we've been able to help them because of the economy. Well, the economy is drying up a little bit, and those want to sells are going to quickly turn into, okay, I know I said I wanted this, but now I just need that. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for the need, and you need to know how to solve that needy problem. That's how you're going to help people. I never try to take advantage of anybody. My sister used to say that years ago. She used to say, oh, you just take advantage of people. No, I don't. I've never once put a gun to anybody's head and said, sell me your house. I simply make an offer that makes sense to me. I try to solve their problem. They either say yes or they say no. Okay. So if you have an issue with that, someone's going to buy their house. Okay. Why not it be you if you can solve their problem? That's my point. All right. Let's see what else we got as far as questions. Okay. Michael says, so back to answer your question. I don't use a percentage. I try to get as much as I possibly can. So what is your ideal house price range when selling on lease product? I will typically sell, okay, when we look at ARVs, that's another great question, Michael. You're full of them tonight. I always tell people houses always have two testing. Okay. Houses always have what I tell people is two ARVs. You have a retail ARV, or after repair value, and then you have an owner finance ARV. A retail is usually pretty conservative. It's about an average number. So let's say you go into a neighborhood. In fact, I think I may have a slide here that kind of facilitates that. Let me see. If I can find it. I'm sure I do, but it's covered up. So, anyways, if you go into a neighborhood and you look and you have 5 comps, you have one that's sold for 198, one that's sold for 205, one that's sold for 213, 125, or I'm sorry, 198, 205, 213, 225, and 212. So my guess is what would the average be? So the highest is 225, the lowest is 198. So on your retail, you don't want to price it at 198, but you also don't want to price it at 225 when you put it under contract. Now, when you go to fix this up and you go to sell it, you might price it at 235. But when you're evaluating it and when you're making the offer, you don't want to use that as your ARV. You want to use somewhere in the middle range. So let's just say you go and you average those all together and you get to 212. Okay, so you got your high of 225, low of call it 200, and you got your mid range at 212. Your ARV for your retail would be somewhere around 212, 215. Okay. When you owner finance it, you can take that all the way up to the 225 because that's what I do. And I take it all the way up to 225 because I already have a comp at 225. So if they go and say, hey, I want to buy this in 6 months, I got a comp that supports 225. But if I put it at 235, well, I'm $10,000 over the market. That may not appraise. So if I base my purchase decision off of a inflated number at 235, typically when you have your ARV, what happens is you bring your purchase up. You bring your purchase price up as your ARV reaches. So if you keep your purchase price down, your offer tends to go down, right? And vice versa. And that's how it goes. So when you retail, you want to put your price here, make your offer here. But when you're finished with that, because your offer is here, your retail, you can ask this, but then if you have to come down, your margin's still here. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I usually explain this a lot in more detail at the event, but that helps. How much is your option price? How long does this typical take? Philip asks, how long does this typically take? Typically, a lease purchase depends on what Mike tells me. If Mike tells me, dude, I can get this guy a loan, he's at 680. All he needs to do is save up 3%, or all he has to do is, get one little small thing off, and I'll have him a loan in 6 months. Then 6 months. But I don't put anybody into the house until I evaluate the person. That's how you can flip flop your tenants to your higher ratios to actually cash you out. So I can't give you a time. I will say most of my lease with options are 12 to 24 months that I write them, but I try to get them out of that quicker than that. If I want the back end, I want them out as quickly as possible. Okay, what is your lease option? What percentage? Okay, I already answered that one. Why do you consider buying with owner finance inferior to subject to? Well, it's not that I don't buying on owner financing is not inferior. It's just different. They're both a form of owner finance. So I don't know if I read that correctly, read that question completely. I just kind of paraphrased it. He asked, why do you consider buying with owner financing inferior to sub 2? They're about the same. The difference in the two, and this is what we'll cover on Saturday, the difference in the two is owner finances, that house is owned free and clear. Okay, so the incentive for the owner to sell it to you on a really good price with a good payment and things where you can make money is a little bit more difficult than if somebody was in trouble that already had a loan with Bank of America subject to, and all you had to do was rescue them, bring $2,000-$3,000 of their back payments back up to speed, and you now own the home. So it's not so much that it's inferior, it's just easier. I don't know if hopefully that answered your question. Let's see. When doing sandwich lease options, do you get the deed in escrow? No, I don't. If so, how long is that deed good? If I get the deed in escrow, that's no longer called a sandwich lease option. That is now called a land contract or contract for deed or agreement for deed. You're going to get that in escrow. That's what it's basically. That's basically what you're looking at. So it's a different technique. Uh, do you have to ask the owner if you can do a sandwich lease option or if you are leasing from him? No, I don't ever ask that. It's in the paperwork that they sign. So if they ask, I tell them. I just don't necessarily offer it. Sometimes they automatically know. Sometimes in the conversation, I say, would I always ask to owner finance. I always ask to do a subject to, and if that doesn't work, then I offer to do a wraparound mortgage. And if that doesn't work, I move down the list. And then as I'm walking out, I go, oh, I do have another strategy that, you might be interested in. Have you ever thought about leasing the property? And they're like, well, yeah, maybe. I'm like, well, if you decide that, you can't sell it and you want to lease it, is that an option for you? And they say, yeah, that's probably what I would do. Say, well, I have a lot of tenant buyers that are interested in buying houses. They have a little bit less than perfect credit. Um, and would you be interested in doing a lease with an option to purchase? And then what we do is we find the tenant buyer, we put them in, and then we kind of stay there until they cash this out. Would you be interested in something like that? And that's kind of how I go into that. All right. Hopefully that answered that question, Johnny. Um, FYI, new rules by FHFA will push banks to foreclose instead of workouts. This could change, but current newest rules penalize workouts. Again, that is, people aren't being told that. So some of this may change just because of the circumstance. But again, some of it may not. Are the consequences of defaulting on purchase agreement any worse than not exercising option? No, not really. It depends on how much earnest money, because when you do a lease with a purchase, it's a purchase agreement. So whatever you put down is considered earnest money. Whereas an option is considered non-refundable option deposit. So they're treated two different things. Okay, so we haven't gotten into the paperwork, and I probably won't get into the paperwork tonight because it goes back to this document right here. A lot of people don't even realize that you've got two documents. You've got a lease and you've got an option. They should not, and at least I teach, some people may put it on one form. I do not. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I don't, because I don't want to introduce information that doesn't need to be introduced if I have to evict them or I have to get rid of them or get them out. The option gives the person some kind of equitable title to that property, gives them a legal ground to that property as ownership, right? A lease just is a tenant. So if they don't pay the lease, you take them to eviction court and you basically, displace them, right? Through the sheriff's department. So usually, and this goes into the paperwork when you fill this out, and this is our lease. This is how we use when we go to sell. I'll cover all of this stuff in great detail with you. But when you fill out the option, that option is who's the owner of the property or who will be the owner. So for example, and I'm going to confuse you maybe a little bit. So let's say I go to Mr. Green and I buy this in my company name, ABC Buying Company, LLC, right? I go and I sell to Mr. Blue, or I don't know which one was which. I can't remember now. Go to my tenant buyer. when I go to put the option, my option is basically with the company that's buying it. Who's the owner? So, for example, if I buy it subject to from my homeowner and I put it into a trust, the person that fills out that option agreement is the trustee, not me as a member of the LLC. It's whoever the trustee is. They fill out that option agreement, which is the ownership. So, and I'll go a little bit deeper and say the the lease agreement is usually signed by, quote unquote, the management company. Okay, whoever the management company is. So I'll use this as an example. I buy this property from the seller subject to. I put it into a trust and I make Steve my trustee. Okay, I still have my LLC, my Springboard LLC, real estate, that's the name of my company, as the management company. Well, the property is owned by a trust. So when I go into the agreement with my new buyer, the option has to be signed by whoever owns it, whoever the owner is, whether that be an LLC or in this case, a trustee. The lease agreement can be signed by me as the management company. So Steve would be my trustee. He would sign the option agreement. Don, me, would sign the lease agreement as the management company. Okay, so wherever the mailing address for the owner is, in this case, a trust mailing address, that's where any option payments, when it goes to get cashed out and the sale goes through, that goes through that funnel. Any rent payments and anything coming in and out of my bank account for maintenance, whatever, goes through the management company and gets paid to your LLC or whoever's managing that company. Now, in order for that to be correct, without you having to have, without going into mismanaging of funds, right? You have to have a management agreement. So the trust would sign a management agreement with me, even though we may be the same person per se. You got to look at entities. So my trust entity signs a management agreement with my LLC entity and says, hey, we're hiring you to be the manager. And that allows you so that you won't have what they call commingled funds. So if you ever to get sued or whatever, your funds aren't what's considered commingled because you actually have. So now that all that rent payment can go into your LLC bank account and be used for management, paying rent, paying all this stuff. And then when you pay the owner, whatever that portion is, that gets paid to that's technically how you should do it. Paid to whatever bank account is tied to that owner. And I hope I didn't confuse the hell out of you. Made perfect sense to me. But if you aren't, that may have gone with may bring up a whole other set of questions. What was the name of the software package you were showing us? If you're talking about the marketing stuff, that was called Canva, Canva. Let's see. Can you give an example of how you use private money with creative deals? Yes and no. Let me move on. I'll try to remember that. And I got Brian's subject to. Let me write that down. So I got those two questions. I'll try to come back to those. So Brian sub 2, insurance question. I think that's an insurance question. Okay. And well, I'll answer Brian's question right now because I may not come back to that. His question is, when you buy a property subject to, how do you handle the insurance on it? Do you use the homeowner's existing insurance or you do get your own policy? Well, as my statement many times will be, that depends. If you can use the existing policy and they'll be able to redo that policy, because I'm going to give you the paperwork to send there. It's going to be a power of attorney. There's some documents that you've got to send it. It allows you to do that. You can just amend the current policy and make them as their interest may appear, the owner, and just amend the existing policy to reflect whatever entity you bought it in. I recommend a trust, but you can buy it in whatever entity you want. I would go the advice of any attorney or title company that you're using, how they would recommend it. But I use a trust. So I would amend the current policy to the trustee. The trustee would be the one that would send in the amended policy. And that way nothing really changes with the bank, except they'll add an additional loss payee of the trustee. And you may include the homeowner and there as what they call ATIMA, as their interest may appear, list the homeowner as well. Because a lot of times if there is a loss, they're going to list the lender, the homeowner that's on the policy, that's on the loan, and the trustee. So, but a lot of times if I don't like the policy is too expensive, or they don't have a policy, sometimes they didn't have a policy, et cetera, then I would get a new policy, and I'll tell you that company on Saturday. I'd have to look it up, and it'll take me too much time to look it up. And if somebody has it handy, you can put it in the chat. So, all right. So that takes me down to, all right. Next question. Okay, so Mike put his number out there, anybody that needs it. What is the ideal house price range when selling on a lease purchase? Did I answer that? I may have answered that. Do you prefer to work in median priced houses, below median, or above median priced houses? I prefer, if my sandwich lease option or I'll be truthful. For me to do a sandwich lease option, because I know so much and I have so many other techniques in my pocket, I rarely do a sandwich lease option. Now, I do lease options, but I rarely do a sandwich lease options. And I'm going to get into some of the reasons why I don't do that, why I don't choose to do that. But if for some reason that is the absolute last resort and somebody says, yes, I will do that, then I would do that. Then I would, rather than walk away completely, as long as the numbers work, I would do that. But it is never going to be my first 1, 2, or 3, or even 4, maybe third or fourth choice. And the main reason is because you don't own it. All you do is control the paper. So, for example, Mr. Blue in this example right here, he's in trouble. He needs to get rid of this. If he's in trouble, I, as the investor, should be able to convince him with what I say to do either a subject to, or if he won't do that, a wraparound mortgage. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, if you can convince somebody to do a lease with an option to purchase, you can probably convince them to do a wraparound mortgage at the minimum. It's all in how you do it, right? It's all in what you say and how you. So I haven't used a sandwich lease option in years because I've always been able to do either a wraparound mortgage or subject to. But again, when you're new, this is an easy concept to understand. It's easy paperwork, and the seller doesn't have to be super motivated. The numbers just have to kind of work. You know, they don't have to have a true need to sell. They could have a want to sell. And because here's the benefits to them, negatives to you. The benefits to them, because you don't own it, they still take all the tax deductions. So you get no tax deductions. So you get hurt from an income perspective. So you get, now the $5,000 that they give you on the option money isn't taxable until either A, they move out, or you sell the property. Then that $5,000 becomes a taxable event for you. So that $5,000 is tax-free temporarily, right? But once they move out, once they break the lease or move out of the option or they cash you out, then that $5,000 becomes a taxable event. Same thing goes with the back end. Obviously when you sell it, you pay taxes on that. You have no offset of any expense other than anything you spent expense-wise on it. But you can't do any depreciation or anything like that, right? Because you don't own it. The real negative, though, comes into the fact that if you buy this house or you put this under contract and Mr. Blue is in a bad spot, maybe he's thinking about filing bankruptcy or has two payments, can't make his bills, can't make ends meet, and all of a sudden he has to file bankruptcy. Because you don't own it, you have no control. That now puts your position in jeopardy, because now all of a sudden Mr. Green comes along and says, hey, I want to exercise my option. Well, in that document, it says you must be able to give good, clean, marketable title to him or the deal's off. Well, if you can't, and in this case, you wouldn't be able to give good, clean, marketable title because it's tied up in bankruptcy, guess what you got to do? If you can't give him clean, marketable title and he's got to walk, guess what you have to give him back? You have to give the non-refundable $5,000 back because you couldn't give him clean title. He didn't just walk or didn't buy it. You couldn't produce for him. So that becomes a very detrimental thing for him and you, right? So that's why I don't particularly like to do that, is because I don't want to get caught in the middle. Now, some of you may say, well, wouldn't that be the same thing if you buy it subject to or you do a wraparound mortgage? Yes and no. As long as you're doing an arm's length transaction, I've had this happen in the past with me several times, where I simply, because I was able to show a HUD statement, show an arm's length transaction, I was able to take that paperwork, or my attorney was, go meet with the trustee and the bankruptcy judge and say, we bought this house. This is what happened. It needs to be excluded from the bankruptcy court. I have never failed, knock on wood, in that regard, because I was able to prove that I had an arm's length transaction. I closed with an attorney, or in your case, if you're out in Florida or whatever, a title company, and it's an arm's length transaction. So if you do a tabletop closing, you can't, it's not the same. You won't have a arm's length transaction. So it could get a little sticky. That's the difference. Let's see. Do you have to make sure that there is not a no sublease clause? I assume you fix that by using your own paperwork. Exactly. If they come to me and say, hey, you can't sublease it, then I'm out. Because what's the point? And at that point, I would say, look, that's my whole end game with this. I have tenant buyers that, do you want me to get you out of this thing? If so, I need to put one of my tenant buyers in there that needs a little bit of work. And we do a lot of screening on them, so we're not going to put anybody in there that's a deadbeat, although that, sometimes can happen because we don't have a crystal ball. But generally speaking, we put people in here that, and we work with them to get them qualified. And you can give them a number and say, look, 7 or 8 out of 10, they buy it. Sometimes they don't. So, you need to be prepared for that. But generally speaking, we work really hard. We don't make any money until this thing sells. So we work really hard to get this person to cash us out. So it again comes down to how much what you say to them. In a sandwich lease option, how do you keep the sellers from not allowing you to buy? In a sandwich lease option, how do you keep the seller from not allowing you to buy? Yeah, I can't. I have an option. So at any point in that option, I can buy that property. But if they go into bankruptcy or they get into an accident, they get into a lawsuit and something gets attached to that property, I have a cloud on that title. They have a cloud on that title. They can't give me good marketable title. Therefore, I can't transfer good marketable title to somebody else. That's what makes that dangerous. when I first started 20 some years ago, my mentor did exclusively sandwich lease options. And I learned from him. And he did really well at this. But he had no obligation, meaning if his tenant didn't pay, guess what? He wasn't obligated to pay that mortgage. Whereas in a subject to, if my tenant buyer doesn't pay, I mean, I've got an obligation. I've signed up as an obligation to pay that mortgage. Because if I don't pay that mortgage, it goes against the homeowner's credit. So there's a moral and ethical obligation when you have a wraparound a subject to mortgage that you're paying versus a wraparound mortgage versus a sandwich lease option. On a wraparound, you would be paying the homeowner, and then they in turn would be paying their mortgage note. On a subject to, you're going and paying directly to the lender. So let's call it Bank of America. So the flow of paperwork is different. Is there any way to keep your spread confidential from the seller in a sandwich lease option, or will they all know your profit spread? Yeah, you can do a double closing just like you would any other wholesale deal, because you got two documents there. You've got a buy document, you got a sell document. I can sell now. If they're smart enough to go back 6 months from now when they record both documents, they'll see the second sale. So technically, no, there's no way for you to see it. But right there on the spot, so they don't get wigged out at the closing table, then yeah, there is a way you can do that. It'd be double closed just like anything else. So hopefully that works. For creative deals, what price range of houses would be ideal? Creative deals, whatever you feel you can afford if you've got to make that payment on your own. So, I tend to stay away from $500,000 and up houses, because if they go vacant 1 month or 2 months or 3 months, I don't want to have to be making $3,000, $4,000, or $5,000 a month payments. So when I owner finance something, I tend to make sure that my payment's low enough that I can handle it. So that's what I would recommend you. So depending on your budget, when you're taking over something subject to, or you're doing owner finance, if your tenant doesn't pay you, you remember you have to have you have an obligation to make those payments. So you have a moral and ethical obligation. Now depending on the paperwork you get, you may not necessarily have you may not have an legal obligation, but that doesn't preclude you from having an ethical and moral obligation to pay. Okay. Let's see. I got a comment over here. It says, Don, you might want to let listeners know that as a PPG member, you will work through this process with them. They don't need to memorize everything you say. That's a great point, Mike. So if you're listening and you're not a PPG member, usually about 9:30, we go into, probably around 9 o'clock, we go into deal analysis. So going back to, if you go back to this site here, this is our PPG coaching site. There's a section up front here where it says submit your deal. And if you click on submit your deal, that deal comes to me, and then I see it, and then we cover it that night, or I'll call you on the phone, or I'll sit down with you. The other thing that I will tell you, which I didn't mention before, is there's a more tab with consultations. And this is anybody out there that isn't a PPG member. You can schedule a free 30-minute phone consultation with me just by simply clicking on the book. And if you say book, so like today's the 22nd, I'm obviously pretty busy because I only have Monday open at those times, and I have Thursday open at those times. And then when you go into May, then my calendar opens up a little bit for those types of meetings. So you can schedule free consultation with me, 30 minutes. And that's generally, I can go over whatever you want. Now, what I'll do is I'll make you another offer tonight that if you sign up for the 1997, I'll also give you 5 hours of one-on-one coaching time free. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. That's typically a $200 an hour, or for 2 hours. That's what I charge for consultations. So that'll give you an idea of what the cost of that for 5 hours. That's $1,000 right there. So, and you can use that time however you want. So plus you get all the courses plus the whole year, and everything's included in that price. So it really is a steal. And if this is something that you want to do, people tend in markets like this tend to jump out of real estate. And it's always, I always tell people, most people are backwards. People are jumping in when they should be jumping out, and they're jumping out when they should be jumping in. They're jumping in when it's easy and prices are high and everything appears to be easy, but the prices are high, so it's harder. It's a harder entry point. Well, they're jumping out when the prices are dropping, and that's when you should be jumping in, because that's when you're going to become extremely wealthy. Because when prices come down, it's the age-old saying, you buy low and you sell high. So the best time to buy is going to be in the next year or so, when prices tend to drop. You're also going to be able to become a landlord much easier, because you might be able to do better owner finance deals where you have someone that's willing to finance where they otherwise wouldn't, because they would want all cash. Well, you can, I mean, I just made an offer, and I don't know if Nancy is on. Let me see if Nancy's on. Let me see if Nancy's on. You know, a while, let me see. Nancy. She is not on. Well, Nancy was on one of these PPG classes or one webinar we did, and she had a house. She's an agent that was, I don't know, 2 hours away from here. Really nice house, big house, and the homeowner just wanted the ARV was like 300,000, and it was, oh, I know when it was. It was Shark Tank, because she had talked to me before Shark Tank, and then she brought it up again at Shark Tank, and both Roger Blankenship and Scott Sekulow said, I'm not really interested in it too much. And my offer was, no money down. I'll pay $300 or $320, I think is what it was, $320 a month. And then in 10 years, I'll pay it out at $26,000. I'll pay that off in 10 years. Now it needs a little bit of work, but I've got no money down. And at first she was like, it wasn't even a no. It was like, hell no. Right. Well, I got a phone call from her, or a text message from her today saying, hey, is that offer still good? Let me clarify that to make sure this is the offer. I said, yep, that's the offer. And she said, okay, the owners are cleaning out the place now. We may have a deal on that. So follow up in a market like this is your friend. Do not become overly motivated. So, all right. Let me go back to questions. Did I miss any here? Let's see. All right. For credit deals, what price range? I think I answered that. What is there a way to keep your spread confidential? I already answered that one. But what about the lender requirements? What seasoning requirements? If you're doing a lease with an option to purchase, there is no seasoning requirements. I mean, there may be, but well, that's true. If you're doing a sandwich because you don't have title, You may have to be more creative and do an assignment of that. And if you got a $50,000 assignment, that's going to be a problem. So that is a good question. That is a very good question, because if you have, and some of you may not even be aware of what I'm talking about, and there is seasoning requirements for FHA loans or government type loans, right? Meaning you have to own it for 90 days, or I think it's 90 days, right? So you have to buy it, own it for 90 days, and then you can sell it. Otherwise, they won't allow you to sell that quickly. Well, there's a couple ways you can handle this. You can go out on the limb, and if you know that they've been qualified, you can buy it from your homeowner. And I mean, there's lots of creative ways you could do this. You could buy it, owner finance it from them, and explain to them that, hey, your tenant buyer has an FHA. I need to own this thing for 90 days. So I'd like to do a wraparound mortgage for 90 days, put it all in writing, and then you become the owner for 90 days while your tenant buyer qualifies. You can do that. I mean, there are several creative ways around that, but you're right. That could potentially be an issue. That's where we come in. That's where I come in. So when you come to PPG, you get my personal cell phone number, you get the group me, you get a ton of stuff, and you see us on a normal basis when we're not locked in our houses. You probably see me 3 or 4 times a week. You have the ability to reach out and talk to me 3 or 4 times. So there's no reason on the world. If you go to some other of these companies out of Utah or California or wherever, you may see them once a year or once every couple months, or you may talk to someone on the phone every week, but I promise you it's not the same. Didn't think you could double close. Yes, you can double close. There are attorneys out there that double close. Andrew Gervey is our attorney, or one of our attorneys. He does double closes all the time. Tenant buyer lender might object due to seasoning, though, right? Possibly. Yes, you have to be aware of all of that. That's some of the trials and tribulations of doing a sandwich lease option. It cost me 20 grand in attorney's fees to enforce my option to purchase a property that the owner refused. Allow me to close on due to value going up. Do you have a solution? Let me see if I read that again. It cost me $20,000 in attorney's fees to enforce my option to purchase a property that the owner refused, allowing me to close. So they refused to close based on the option due to the values going up. Do you have a solution for that? Well, the answer is, all right. Yes, there is a creative answer to all of this. And it gets into a much more advanced strategy in options and use of trusts and things like that. So the answer to that question is yes, you could get around it, but it's much more complicated than I can explain on a webinar. And you need a little more seasoning underneath you to know to pull it off. But the easy way, or maybe not the least expensive way, is to do what you did. You got to sue for specific performances. Alan, you and I can probably talk offline. Have you really held these properties for 10 years? Are you talking to me? You're asking me? Yes, I do hold properties for 10 years. Absolutely. Well, yeah, why wouldn't I? Now, it doesn't mean I have to, but yeah, absolutely. Because if I'm getting $300 a month on this property, cash flow wise, didn't cost me anything to get in, why would I want to get rid of it? Now, if they come to me and say, "Hey, I want to buy this and I'm going to make 20 or 30,000," yeah, sure, I'll sell it. And it may not make the 10 years, but why not? That's how you build wealth. I know this is a weekly in-person group. Will I receive the same benefit from the group if I can only come in person once a month and attend the other? No, not at all. We have people attend every week online. You're still going to have the interaction with me right now, whether I'm sitting across from a camera or I'm sitting in the only difference between what we're doing now is it's no different right now with me answering your questions or me going, raise your hand, and I call on you when you raise your hand. Okay, I'm still calling you out by name, like Michael Carpenter. I'm still calling him out by name. I'm still reading his question. I'm still going through his question, still getting all his questions answered. Um, so now Twiggy said, I'm going to try, hang on one sec, try to do this. I think this is a comment or question that came on, and this is going to be really big. So let me see if I can shrink this down so people can see it. I know this is going to be big. Like Val's picture, it had her big picture. And I got to shrink this down. So where did it go? So let's see if I can make that. Sorry, folks. Let's see if I can get rid of me. Let's see. I got to get back to this. All right, so let's try that question again. When I get all these graphics up on the screen, it doesn't always work as well as I had hoped. Cute picture, by the way. Let's see. And by the way, this is the flaws that I have to work through. The question on YouTube is, what about taxes? When you sell owner finance, I paid cash for the property, sell it owner finance. What if they don't pay their taxes? Then you foreclose. If you're selling it, okay, Twiggy, let me. This one's on YouTube. Let me see if I can put this back on up here. Make it smaller so it actually fits. Oops, I keep losing it. But it says, what about taxes? When you sell on owner finance, I paid cash. All right. So when you sell on owner finance, just so you know, when you sell on owner finance, the person you're owner financing it to, they're going to give you a note and deed, a promissory note, and they're going to give you a security deed of some sort, whether it be a mortgage, a deed of trust, or a security deed, depending on your state. Now, you said you lived in, is it Texas, I thought? Maybe not Texas. I said taxes. Okay. So you're going to give them all that paperwork as if they got a loan from you. Well, if they don't pay their taxes, you're going to want to escrow their taxes. Okay, so if they're paying you principal interest of, let's say, $500, and there's another $300 of taxes and insurance, that's their PITI is $800. Well, if they don't make those payments, that $800 to you, then you'll simply foreclose. If that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Wow, I'm running 5% on my computer. So hopefully we won't die. I didn't even see that. Okay, I guess I just don't have the landlord mentality. Philip, maybe not. How do you recommend using private lender for creative deals? Okay, I won't have time to really cover. That's a very deep. The short answer to your question is I find private individuals that I know that have IRA money or old 401k or money that they don't use or isn't in a savings account, unless they're what we call an accredited investor that has that kind of money sitting around. So, and I basically show them how we can use that money to get a higher return for them. So that's the simple version of that. On Saturday, I'll cover a lot more. I just don't have time tonight. Let's see. In the creative offer with the agent Nancy, did she submit the creative offer to the seller knowing she will still receive her commission? Yeah, I told her that's why I went in with no money down. Because the money that I'm going to get from someone that's going to lease purchase it from me, I'm going to give to her. Thank you, Alana. She says, good stuff. We appreciate all the knowledge. You're very welcome. Mike's telling you he's a loan officer. And is this recorded? Yes, it is. It is also put up on my my YouTube channel tonight. And this is the first time I've done that. Let me see if I put that up there. I had it up there. So if you haven't gone to my YouTube channel, I am trying to beef up my YouTube channel. So I would most sincerely appreciate all of you going to my YouTube channel, and I'll put it up here. I thought it was up there. It was, but youtube.com/Don DeRosa 2. I have Don DeRosa, but I can't figure out how to log in, and this is where all my stuff is. So this is, if you wouldn't mind, it would be great. If you enjoyed what you heard tonight, I would love it as a thank you if you went to my YouTube channel and gave me a nice thumbs up, subscribe, and a notification. Also, if you want and you're interested, remember the $19.97 that we're charging for PPG, that really is an unprecedented number. You will never find that. In fact, it's going to go away maybe as early as next week. I have it right now good until Sunday. I haven't decided whether I want to go further than Sunday. But as of right now, it ends Sunday. It ends at 10 p.m. on Sunday. So if you want to take advantage of it, save a little bit of money, get locked in for a whole year, plus you get the 5 hours of coaching, then I would jump on it. I wouldn't wait. As a matter of fact, to give you even more incentive, what I would say is I'll go so far as to say the first 5, and I'm going to go into the shopping cart here and only put 5. So if you don't get the 1997, you will know that you weren't one of the 5. So if it doesn't go through, then you'll know that you weren't one of the 5. Call me, and what I'll do is I'll give you the same price. I just won't give you the 5 hours of coaching. I'll give you the same 1997, but I'll limit it to 5 for the 5 hours. That way, people who are ready to go and really eager to learn and want to know how to really tackle this business, so that you're not looking back 5 years from now going, God, I wish I had done that. I mean, I look at every market cycle that I've been in, that I've gone through, and I look back and go, damn, I didn't buy enough houses during that down cycle. I wish I'd have held everything that I got my hands on. So, Alana, to answer your question, though, you said, is this recorded? The answer is yes. Normally, once I get my act together, I'll be streaming normally we stream directly to our Facebook group, which is closed, but it's always recorded there. So you can watch it at any time. If you were, let's say you missed tonight and you wanted to go tomorrow and watch it, you could watch it tomorrow. You just log into the Facebook group. Now, because of the pandemic and because everyone's been shelter in place, we've opened it up to the public, and what I'm typically doing is putting it on our Facebook page, not our Facebook group, because the Facebook page is open to the public. So And if you want to go to the Facebook page, it is Property Protege Group. And you'll know you're there because it's a page. And it has 3 cups that look like this, kind of stacked side by side. That's the page. That's open to the public. That you'll see the picture of the people standing in front of the houses and whatnot. As a matter of fact, here I'll even go one better for you. I'll see if I can show it to you on here, because I mean we're pretty much winding down. I don't want to keep you guys here too late. I still got a whole bunch of yard stuff to put in my garage. Maybe my wife was nice enough to get my son to do it. All right, so back to here. All right, so if you go into, this is the group, which is only for PPG members. Okay. This is only for PPG members, and this is kind of what it looks like. You'll see it says Property Protege Group Coaching for Real Estate Investors. That's for members only. It says 106 members. Okay. As you go through, normally we have it recorded live directly to it, so you'll see it looks like that. And even on person, it looks right. But what I've been doing is I come here, so this was the announcement, and you will see popular topics right there. If you're a PPG member, maybe you don't even know this, but there's popular topics right there. Every PPG meeting we've had for the past year and a half is in this section. So like all of these are prior sections. March 25th. And you can go back each week. There's March 11th. This one, I don't know what the date was on this one. March 4th. Okay. So you will see, and each one has a topic. Each one is part of the curriculum. And then you can watch, and you'll see a bunch of people like that. You can barely, like sometimes as I put this, you can kind of see like that's what the normal group looks like. And when you join, I usually give you a nice, cool little t-shirt like the one I've got on these pictures. And like the one I have on tonight. Like this, which typically will have PPG on the back. As a new member, I'll give you one of these. We also like to give each person one of these. But there was a shortage of these for a while, and I haven't really seen people. Oh, by the way, remember I mentioned today I had a really crappy day, literally, right? If you came on the call early enough. I also broke my toe. I also broke my foot because my son was screaming, "Dad, come here," and I went running out the door. And when I went running out without any shoes on, I hit my foot on the door jamb. So it has not been a great day for me. So anyways, any other questions? Normally at this time of the night, what I would typically do is, does anybody have any deals? And I would open it up to any deals. But I'm probably not going to do that because I have a whole buttload of stuff in my front yard that it has to go in the garage. So I'm working on, so Alana says, is this recorded? I'm working on half listening. I feel like I missed some nuggets. Well, I would like to say you missed a whole lot of nuggets, but I don't know what your level of expertise is. So I would love to say, yeah, you missed a ton. All right, it started raining in San Francisco. Well, if it started raining, my wife may have gotten to the point where she's like, okay, screw it. I'm not going to wait for him. I'll go do it myself. That would be nice, but it's not very nice to my wife, so I probably should go help her. Any other questions? Let me see if there's any Q&A, any comments over here. A bunch of comment sections. Whoops. I'd love to know if you were able to listen on YouTube, I would love to know what your experience with that was. Um, from a from a technical standpoint, because we're going to be trying. There's some cool things that I want to start doing. I'm going to start pushing this out to a bunch of sites at the same time. So eventually we'll be pushing it out, and not all of this, because I also want to remind everybody that I don't have crap. Let's see if I can find these. I want to remind everybody that, let me put this up, that about this weekend we have, if you want to sign up for I think it's the one right here, this right here. I guess I don't need that. It's already on there. If you're interested in signing up for the creative deal structuring class, if you like this, you'll love that. We're going to be talking a little more in depth, talk about the paperwork, what it looks like, when to use it, how to intertwine these different methods. So that's this Saturday. Please register in advance, because from what I understand, and I have not been through this because I have a whole different process on my end, but from what I understand is it's a 2-step process. And you have to sign up and then register. And what we don't want to do is we want to make sure you're registered and not just signed up. So from what I understand, and Chrissy, maybe you can, okay, so this isn't what he's been giving me. Chrissy said it's CDS. He's been giving me this quote for over a week now. So I hope this is the right one, CDSO, because that's the one I've been giving. Okay, she says I'm right. Yes, it is. So area.us/CDSO is the right link. You don't have to put www in front of it. In fact, if you do that, it won't work, right? So just put area.us/CDSO. That'll sign you up, and I believe, and she can correct me in the comments or the chat, that I think this is a 2-step process. You can sign up. It says you must be a current RIA member. My recommendation is it's $100 if you're not a RIA member, but it's $100 to join as a RIA member. And a lot of times Dustin will give it to you for free to come to that. So it's a no-brainer. So join for $100 and get the event for free. Anyways, that's usually what happens. But it is, from what I understand, a 2-step process. And what happens is people get really frustrated at the last minute because they did the first part but didn't register for the event. And therefore, then they go to the event at 9 o'clock in the morning and they go, I can't get in. And that's because they didn't register. So she's putting some details in the chat. So if you're familiar with it, if you want to go check it out, go ahead. Any other comment anybody has? I don't know what else I can cover. We've covered a ton of stuff. And by the way, this is our PPG closed Facebook group for all PPG members. But you can go in here and you can see all these different topics. So each PPG meeting is tagged there. We have all these other boot camps. Like I announcing to record the coaching call. Like each Monday we have a coaching call. Well, I've been recording that coaching call now in case you can't be on it, if you wanted to listen. And I've been putting them up there to do that so you can watch them. So missed, it gives you a great opportunity to go back. And one of the things that not a lot of the other folks that come to the RIA groups or around the country do a lot of online stuff, a lot of streaming stuff like this. everything we do is streaming. Everything we do. So if you can't make it live, don't sweat it. You can watch live from home. You can watch later. Everything is recorded. Everything that we do gets put up on this Facebook page right here. Everything we do. So, like, for example, I downloaded some software that I want everybody to check out, new software. They go right to the site, they pick it up. Here's the details for the creative deal structuring. So I would go to AREA or Atlanta REIA to look at that. But now I also wanted to mention one last thing. We also have a Facebook page, and that is different. If you notice, the one had looked like a little Florida landscape. The PPG page looks like this. And that's different than this one's free to the public, and sometimes we'll stream to this. But this is a great place to go and get some information about what we do and how it benefit you. We have lots of recommendations on there, so if you like to read other people's recommendations, by all means, check out. All kinds of stuff. And we put, lighthearted stuff up there. We really do treat this like a family, and I can't wait for everybody to get back in the same room because I like doing stuff together. I like the outings that we do. We went to a hockey game. We went to an escape room. I think Dustin mentioned that when we get back together, we might want to go do a what they call it, low country boil, to kind of get everybody back together. Obviously, we don't want to do that too soon, but if you're interested in buying tonight, there's a couple ways you can do that. One is you can text me or Chrissy, or you can go to, let me pull this down. Let me pull that down and put in its place. You can go there, but if you go there, make sure if you want the special pricing, make sure you put PPG special in the coupon code. Otherwise, you won't get it. Otherwise, they'll charge you the $20.97. So, hey, okay, we can talk more about that later on coaching calls. It takes you to the Zoom registration right away, so follow instructions. Okay, so that's good to know. So when you go there and register, it's a two-step, but make sure you do the second step. Just follow the instructions. All right, folks, thank you very much. Like I said, normally we would be doing deal structuring tonight. Unfortunately, I'm not prepared to do that. Next week, we are going to be talking about, here's what's going to be coming up in the upcoming weeks. We're going to be talking about negotiations. We're going to be talking about private lending. We're going to be having a guy on talking about short sales. We're going to be all the things that I think you should need or would need in this upcoming mess that we're going to have. We're trying to we're going to try to move all that up so that we get it to you on the front end. It looks like I'm lagging a little bit, so I got a lot of stuff going on here. Maybe my internet's crashing on me. So, all right, folks, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you. I appreciate anybody that's gone to the YouTube page that I ask, which is this right here. I appreciate you doing that and giving me a subscribe and a like. I'm trying to get 1,000 so that I can do live streaming. But thank you very much. Have a great evening, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope to see you as a PPG member. Good night. Enjoy. God bless. Don't lick anything. Wash your hands. Have a good night.